Hello, welcome to the Kentucky Valley Educational Co-op. Today, my name is Stephanie Kidd, and I'm going to be working on questioning and mathematics. Questioning is so important in our classroom, so I've given you a couple of websites, as you can see at the bottom of your screen, that's going to be resources that you can use. Also, if you want to look at some other great people who do questioning a lot, Stanley Goff, Meredith Gow, Heather Clayton, those are just a few. Heather Clayton does a lot of stuff with making standards come alive. And then Stanley Goff has the importance of art and questioning in an effective classroom community. So those are just a couple that you may want to look up after you finish watching this video. Let's start with, how do we get students to make sense of mathematics and help them work through that together? So I'd like to start with questions that tell me about your thinking. Tell me, how did you decide that? Can you justify that? I also like to talk about, tell us more about what you're thinking. That gets them to give me more in depth. I want that child to talk about the steps that they took and why they took those steps in the mathematical process. I try not to ask for an answer at first. That way students are not unsure of themselves when it comes to giving out another answer or another way of doing it. And then we say, this is the answer. And then I have the kids, to start from there. And we can also sometimes ask them, what do you think about what so-and-so said? Or do you agree? Do you disagree? But the big thing with that one is, why do you disagree? Why do you agree? Why or why not that you do that? So then, does anyone have the same answer but maybe did it a different way? And that gets them thinking about different ways to do a problem, because you don't always have to do the problem exactly the same. And making sure that they can back up why they got that answer more so than the answer they got. For this one, it's helped students to rely more on themselves to determine if they are correct. So one of the things that I'm going to ask them is, why did you think that? So they can start to think, what made you think that? Where did you start? How did you begin? How did you reach this conclusion? Did you follow the steps through? Does that make sense to you? And then sometimes I'll even ask them to model it, whether it's with blocks or maybe even with drawing out the situation that's in the word problem. All right, could you show us how you figured that out? And then that's also going to be some kind of a model. They may be using a graphic organizer to talk about the steps in that. So these are all things that I'm going to ask them to do, or just give them questions to try to get them thinking in the right direction, and then get them thinking about how they can self-talk themselves through a problem also. That's just a few of the ways I'm going to start out getting them to rely upon themselves to determine if they have the correct answer. So this one has helped students learn to reason mathematically. First of all, I'm going to look at the child and I may say, does that always work? Tell me why. Or why doesn't it work the next time that you try that? And then I'm going to ask the students, can you think of another example? And with that, I can also do, can you think of another problem that's similar to this one that we may have done before? And then, how does that match what was written on the board a few minutes ago? That could be an example of that. Can you explain your representation? And is there another way that you can represent this problem? And then, how can you prove that? So if they've worked out a problem and maybe they've not showed a model, they've not done any drawings, how can you prove that? Can you show me a way to prove that? So get out the blocks, get out the models, use a graphic organizer, whatever it may be, but let them prove their understanding of the problem. So helping students learn to make conjunctures, to invent, and to solve problems. So with this one, what would happen if, and then kind of fill in the blank. Do you see a pattern? Many times our students do not see patterns, so start talking about what's happening each time. Do you see a pattern that's happening each time? Those kind of things. Can you predict what the next one would be? What would the last one be? Those can be brought out in, charts. Also, what about putting things in order? What happened if I use a 1 here, if I use a 2 here, and then a 3 here? What would happen? And then, what facts do you have about this problem? That's another thing. Can you guess and check what other members of your groups have tried? So you're getting them to have conversations. What's other members in your group tried? How did you do that problem? What's alike or what's different about your method compared to someone else's? These are all things that I can get students talking many times about their problems, and having them to look at their problem compared to somebody else's problem. Did I do it the same way? Did I change something? Did we get the same answer? Those kind of things help them to see. The cover, copy, compare. So I actually worked my problem out. I covered it up. We are going to uncover it. We're going to look at it. Do we get the same answer? Do we do it the same way? We're going to compare that, and then we're going to talk about who has the right answer. Helping students to connect mathematics, its ideas, and its application. How does this relate to something else that you've been working on? What have you learned before this that was helpful in solving this problem? So what were the steps leading up to this? And then, can you give an example of this? And again, with the examples, you can be thinking real world. What's an example in real world that they would be doing? And you'll want to model a couple of real world examples so they kind of understand where this fits in. How does it match some other stuff that we've done? Those are some things that we can use, and then just get them to explain that thinking again. I like this website because it provides this wonderful PDF that could be used to be made into a flip question guide for a teacher, or it could be a large poster for students to use to have conversations to themselves or with a partner. It could also be used as just a reminder for the teacher in the back of the room that, hey, I need to ask the question a little bit differently, don't know how to word it. Pick one and go with it, and just get those questions start flowing. That way, students' thinking starts also flowing, and you start to understand where that student's at. Do I need to go back and reteach? Those kind of things. So with that, this wonderful poster is something that you can use in your classroom. Please take time to go look at this website. It's great. And I'm very glad that you took time to watch my video. Another thing is, if you have any questions, you can contact me at stephanie.kidd@floyd.kyschools.us. I greatly appreciate talking with you. I'll holler at you later.